Hey, friends. Welcome to the Strangers in Common podcast. I hope this finds you well, but if you're not well, that's okay. I'm always here for you. Last couple episodes of the season, so we'll go ahead and jump into it. Let's go ahead and get to know somebody that you don't. And today, that person is Aegelis. Great. Well, Aegelis, thank you for joining me on this. We'll go ahead and take a journey through your life. So, wherever you want to start,
Great. Well, thank you, Neil. I appreciate you having me on today.
of course.
I am a Christian biochemist, so I've been through the gambit of studying biology in college. I had a job in banking for a decade, so I've had 10 years of banking experience, and then I went into biochemistry. And I had been writing since off and on since I was a kid, but I hadn't really given publishing that much consideration because of the cost and the time and self editing or finding an editor. All of that package was a difficult and uh, quite a large mountain that it looked like it needed to climb. And my father had said, "Did you know you can publish through Amazon for free?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's nice." I kind of heard things like that before, and then when we got into the details of it, when you start reading the fine print, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's free. All you have to do is buy 30 of your own books and sign a contract and give us $300." And I'm like, "Well, where's the free part?" So,
Right.
nothing about that sounded free to me. And then there were some places that would waive that $300, but they still wanted you to sign a contract and buy your own books in order to make it worth their while. And I kind of get that. As a publisher, you need some kind of guarantee that your time and money is worthwhile. But that's what kind of let everything sit on the shelf. I had two and a half, I would say, books sitting on the shelf, uncompleted, and I was just going through life doing the normal working thing. And once he said that Amazon published for free, I was like, all right, well, I'll check it around for his sake. I'll poke around and say why I didn't do it. And every step I took through KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, through Amazon, was giving me the green light, saying, yeah, it's free. All you have to do is, get your documents together in a Word document, upload it to our site, register, proofread it, check it, make sure it's good, and hit go ahead and publish. So I was surprised within a couple hours I had, learned the process and was able to upload a manuscript and take a look at it. And I was like, holy smokes, there's a book on Amazon that you can go to Amazon and buy. It was that easy. And another thing that I kind of was looking at too was cover design, because you want your book to have a cover on it, and they had some
Right.
stock images. And as I was playing around, I was clicking on some stock images, and one of them was a pirate flag, a Jolly Roger. And being that this was my first book was a pirate adventure, I was like, all right, that's good. I'll just take the flag and slap the title on it, slap my name on it, and say, let's go with it. And
Right.
there it was. It was available on Amazon. And I was kind of shocked and then, what do I do now?
Right.
So part of that process too was the editing. I didn't want to have to go through and self edit because I was afraid I'd be taking away from my own story, or that I didn't have enough English background to say, okay, here's a finished work. I had some help with my wife. She basically had read through it and did some redlining on it, which was great. And she taught me a
Okay.
few things too. She just had a natural inclination for English in college, and so between her redlining and me rereading it 100 times, I had put through the publish on it. And even then, I wasn't quite done or satisfied. I had read it a couple times and made changes and took it back offline, edit, put it back online, and on through the
Gotcha.
process. And so the good news is I didn't really have to worry about uh, it flying off the shelf because nobody knew it was there. It was just
Right.
my books was on. So at first I was really nervous. I was like, what if somebody picks it up and reads it and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy didn't edit it, or this is awful kind of thing, without having anybody aware of it. But I didn't really have to worry about it. The book doesn't sell itself. It needs some kind of help there. So
Right.
once I got it into a form and shape that I liked, I think after about a month, then I was like, okay, friends and family, look, I've got this thing on Amazon, check it out. And they did. And I was like, all right.
Nice.
So it wasn't a lot. I mean, a few people looked at me like, what? You're an author? I've known you my whole life. You never said anything about writing. You're an author? Like, and so you got some eye rolls or doubt, maybe, or maybe just shock. They're like, huh? You see, you're published. Yes, it's published. Like with an ISBN and everything. Yes, it
Yep.
has an ISBN number. So you are a legitimate author through that process. And it does go through Amazon review. They want to make sure that the book isn't harmful to people and that it meets a
Right.
certain level of quality or criteria. But once it does, you're golden, you're in. And after friends and family got word out, I was like, okay, what do I need to do about marketing and learning how to get this out there? And there's all kinds of options through Amazon ads, through Google, Facebook. And then, of course, you got your free things like social media too, like LinkedIn. Actually, a couple of coworkers through LinkedIn had seen the book and they picked it up, and I was surprised.
Oh, okay.
I just threw that out there. I was like, "Hey guys, wrote a book," and then two of my coworkers picked it up. I was like, "What? They bought it?" And they're not people I'd talk to on a regular basis, but they knew who I was and they were curious.
Right.
So I got a little bit of a help and a push from friends, family. It's always a nice thing. You get a couple sales there. I bought my own book. I think I was my biggest buyer at the time. So I said, okay, I need one of everything. I need the electronic version. I need a paperback. I need a hardback.
Right.
And then I need to buy one for my daughter, and I need to buy one for my niece because I dedicated my first book to them. So I'll get
Nice.
a copy as well. So you get really excited through the process, and and you share it with as many people as you can. And it's one of those things you can't expect everybody to care or everybody to come rushing onto Amazon, logging in and buying, because everybody has their own taste with reading. You don't serve
Right.
everybody the same dish and expect everybody to like it. It's just probably not going to happen. So I was like, all
Yeah.
right, that was successful. Book number one done. It's a fiction book. It's a pirate chasing adventure called X Captain Ruark's Adventure. And
Nice.
Captain Ruik spelled Ruik. And basically, she's a pirate hunter for the crown for her nation. So she basically has to retrieve stolen treasure. She's got a crew that's a little unsavory, but they're respectful because she pays them money after the successful mission. And in the world, there's not very many female captains, so she kind of comes head to head with the problems of being the only female captain out there, um, and overcoming that adversity as well as a pirate king who she has to chase down on an island as well. So there's cannons and sword fights and all kinds of havoc going on. A touch of comedy and a little bit of heart as well.
That's really cool. Um, so how many books have you published now?
I have four in total. I'm working on the fifth. So
Okay.
brief synopsis on the others. The second one is called Sophizo, Sophizo. And a lot of people look at that going, I have no idea what that is. And understandably, I intentionally picked that word because it's from the Greek. It means to make wise. And this one was one that I had put together for my niece and my daughter for when they got old enough to have children or work on personal development or being on their own, becoming a better person. So I put all that together in one package: parenting, personal development, and spirituality, and put it into a book. And that was a nonfiction help guide. And
Okay.
uh, anybody, I think everybody and anybody of any age and experience can put one together because you're basically saying, here's what I learned through my life, and just
Right.
sharing that with other people. So I tried to make that as interesting and helpful as possible to others. And originally, I just got it for them, and I'm like, well, since it's already in book form, I'll just publish it, and did. And I got some positive feedback on it. So I kept that one going as well. The third one, okay, so writing a book can be havoc. It can be kind of crazy on the mind. You wake up at 3, 4 a.m. and you got an idea. Okay, oh, I got to write this down before I forget. Or you convince yourself that you're going to remember it in the morning. Oh, I'll just remember this in the morning, and you don't. And it's
Nope.
and it goes kind of crazy. And even learning the process, Amazon makes it easy, I'll say that, but learning the process of going through self-editing and publishing can be quite crazy. And even and marketing, by far I'd say, is the hardest part of the process, can rattle the brain. So my third one I had written in a couple months called Psycho Author. And the story
Okay.
the story is about a man who's so desperate to get published and to get read and to get out there that he goes to extremes in order to get all that to happen. And so happens he gets accused of murder. So
Oh,
yeah, lands him in an asylum, and he's trying to plead his case to the reader that, I'm not crazy here. This is a crazy system, and I'm trying to navigate it. So he writes four books, and all four of them end up getting banned for one reason or another, different reasons.
Oh,
So his letter is like a desperate plea to the reader saying, "Hey, I'm not crazy and I am innocent and I just want to get a book published." And it's a dark comedy. So there's plenty of humor to be found in there. A lot of sarcasm and wit within that book.
that's pretty cool.
The fourth one is called Specks of Shadow, Flecks of Light, and that's kind of an anthology collection of various flash fiction, poems, and short stories. And this is all those writings that I had since I was a teen. So I didn't keep anything from prior to 14, 15, but around that time, I
Right.
just had everything sitting in a notebook, and I realized, oh my gosh, I got this great big thick book of stuff. I don't even know what to do with it. It's just random stuff that was going on at the time. Some of it was funny, some of it was fiction, and some nonfiction. And I just started blending it all together and stuck it in the mixer and put it in a book and said, let's see how this thing flies.
Right.
I was looking around to see if there's anything like it out there. There is a lot of poetry books, and there's a couple, short story collection type things. But this book is total chaos, and I was surprised that the reception on that was good. That people liked the roller coaster ride, the ups and downs. Is it going to be funny, or is it going to be sad, or is it going to be deep or kind of shallow? So it's all over the map, and so far that one's been outpacing on sales than all the other ones, and getting some good reception. So that's all four books: X, Captain Rourke's Adventure, Sophizo, Psycho Author, A Dark Comedy or Is It, and Specks of Shadow, Flecks of Light. If you go onto Amazon, or hopefully just search anywhere on the web for Aegelis, Aegelis, then hopefully those pop up for you. So I try
Well,
to
and
I try to
we'll
go.
we'll have you're good. We'll have the links up for that as well, so I'll make sure
Great.
everyone has it.
Cool.
Your fourth book, I did the same thing. Just so you know, um, about 10 years ago or so, I had notebooks of writings because that's what I used to do to cope with stuff. And finally, my wife pushed me to just publish them, and I did. So I think I have a book similar to yours.
Cool. You got
Um,
you got the title for it?
it's Emotions of a Dark Horse. So with mine, pretty. It's a lot of dark stuff. It's a lot of dark writing, stuff like that. I actually went through Lulu because I was trying to figure out how to self-publish, and again, it was a very kind of easy process like Amazon. Didn't cost me nothing. Um, I was kind of like you. I'm like, oh, I got to buy a copy of the book for my kids, and I got to have me one. And my kids weren't allowed to read it when I first published it because there was a lot of stuff that I dealt with like cutting and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I didn't really want them to read that stuff, but with mine, and I don't know if you can relate to this. I didn't do a whole lot of marketing. I didn't really know how. Again, social media was there, but it wasn't as big as it is now. I didn't really get any feedback on it, and I got super. I don't want to say angry, but I was upset that people weren't buying it. That I poured my whole soul into this, and nobody cared to give me feedback or pick it up or anything. So
Yeah.
it was very disenchanting
Yeah.
after I published it. Looking back on it, a decade later, and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty heavy book to try to read. Like, I get it now why people couldn't. So I don't hold it anymore. But I don't know if you had that kind of feeling when you've published any of your books where it's like, why is this not getting the traction that I thought it would?
Yep, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, when you're thinking of Amazon, you're like, oh, they're huge and exposure is going to be gigantic. And then I think the big realization for me was when I saw the rankings and people talking about rankings. I was like, okay,
Right.
what's everybody talking about? And then I look on the page there and it says your book ranks something something out of 10 million. I'm like, what? Yeah, out of 10 million books, Amazon's got 10 million books. So congrats, go try to compete with that.
Right.
If you can get your exposure level to that high, good job, and so forth. But yeah, it is disenchanting. And even though it's available to everybody, Amazon doesn't necessarily market directly unless you drive that, unless you say, okay, Amazon, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to market it. And of course it's going to take money. They're going to be like, oh, you want us to show it? Yeah, we'll show it, but
Right.
how often do you want to slow it, and how big's your bank account? So when I saw what the average budget was for an author doing advertising, I was blown away. I was like, holy smokes, who can afford this? So it's
Yeah,
it's not a hobby for people, just to get rich quick overnight. That's not how that works for sure. I see you've got the paperback on Amazon, right?
that's the only one I have. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Okay, cool. So I
I
mean,
never.
it was super easy for me to find it. I just typed in "Emotions of a Dark Horse" and it came up on Amazon,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
got
It's definitely there. Um,
yeah.
it's like I said, it's pretty old. So because I know, like for me, writing was just how I coped with anything going on in my life. It was almost a secret. Like I didn't want to share it with anybody. I was really leery about even letting anybody read it. What started your writing when you were young?
I can't really say for sure if there was a definitive point or moment. I can say when I was a kid, I remember my dad showed me a picture when I was in my early 20s, and I was 6 years old, and I was next to my best friend at the time, and I was holding something up. And I was like, what the heck am I holding up in the picture? And I had created on lined paper a comic book called The
Okay.
Last. Well, think 6 year old, 7-year-old drawing, by the way. So, and I had no art background, and it was obvious that I had no background. Almost stick figure in the way it was. But the comic was called The Last Ninja, and the premise of it was what we would kind of consider cyberpunk today, but there wasn't a whole lot of that around at my young age. But
Right.
yeah, basically, it was a ninja that was still around despite the changes in technology. It was very futuristic. He had a laser rifle and all this cool gadgety stuff. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I remember that as a kid, I wrote a comic. And I had gotten maybe halfway through it because got myself stuck. So I had like a plot point that I couldn't resolve. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what happens next. I'm done. And I just kind of moved on. And then I think, just kind of doodling in class. I was a big daydreamer in class. I didn't like school, didn't pay attention that much. I got good grades. I mean, I managed to graduate and go to college off of it, but I was a BC student, and I didn't really enjoy school that much. So I was daydreaming. I was doodling. My doodles are also still very basic. They're not very. I thought you were supposed to improve in art over time, but maybe I just don't have the eye for that.
You and me both, so it's okay.
So I just had these little short stories or scraps of paper, or in English class, there'd be like a response from the teacher. Teacher would say, what do you think about spring? And I would write a couple sentences on it because that was required. And then one day I got really kind of smarty about it. She goes, what do you, and I think that was the question was, what do you think about spring? And then like wrote a page and a half, 2 pages on how springs are very important in our daily lives. Like mattress springs and slinkies and things like that. And then next thing I know, she nominates me for the talented and gifted students or something
Oh, nice.
because of my goofy sense of humor and just my willingness to write about that kind of thing. So a lot of it was just like seriously scrap paper just at the end of my school notes. And I just kept it all together in a collection. When I had met my wife, and at that time, she was my girlfriend, she said, don't throw anything away. I was like, what? She goes, well, don't, if you wrote it, don't throw it away. And that kind of hit me funny because I was like, well, it's garbage. It's crap. I would read it a couple days
Right.
and I'd be like, this is pretty awful. Or I would feel differently and it was no longer relevant, and I just thought it had aged out. But I stuck by those words and I couldn't even say why. And then, all of a sudden I had a binder full of this and I was like, I should put this on computer so I don't lose this binder kind of thing. So it's just
Right.
trying to preserve that. And it became more or less a journal, a history for me to reflect back on when I got older. And then flash forward all those years. When I wrote X Captain Rook's Adventure, it was because I got dropped off at work a couple hours early every day and I had nothing to do. So it was just
Okay.
me and a notepad in the days when cell phones didn't really do much. So I started
Right.
writing a story together. I was like, I want to tell a pirate story, and this is how it's going to go. And I think my dissatisfaction with the way a lot of writers tended to go in books, I would like a character, but then the writer would go in another direction, or they'd kill him off. And I'm like, dang nabbit, you took away my my reason for reading
Right.
the book. and my frustration of just not going to where I wanted to go in the book. And that's why I was like, I want to do this myself and see where it goes and what happens and let things develop. And it got exciting for me. I got exciting with the whole storytelling concept. That happens in sometimes comics and movies as well, where I won't be satisfied with where the director is going or how this ended. You remember the movie Scream, the horror movie?
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody was pumping this movie up. Oh, Scream is awesome. It's the best horror movie ever. Blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't big on horror movies, but I had seen a couple. And ever since maybe halfway through that movie or three-quarters of the way through, I was like, this is not going a good direction. This is kind of going south in a hurry. And then the ending I thought was awful. I was like, man, they had such a great concept at the beginning of this movie. All they had to do was like the first person murdered to be the murderer, you know,
Right.
because all the setup was great for that. And I was like, and this is how they could have done it. And I was thinking in my mind, this should have been rewritten. You know, it could have been a great movie, and it just wasn't done. So my inspiration was, I guess, for reading things that I didn't care for and wanted to write something that I would want to read. And that way, if I published and nobody read it, I don't care. I got my copy. I'll read it. I like it. You know,
Right.
everybody else. You know, if somebody else enjoys it, great. That's a fantastic bonus. And I love to talk about, about my books or even books that they've written. I got talking to a lot of authors and their stuff too. So it's a pretty cool community when you get talking with other authors because you tend to experience very similar things. As you said, this challenging with marketing, it's huge. I mean, you could dump thousands of dollars into it and sell 3 or 4 books. You know,
Right.
if you're lucky, depending on who's doing the marketing. So that's just kind of how it goes in the industry. But I guess the question is, what is your goal? Is your goal to make a book to say, "Hey, I have a book for me," or for my friends and family, or do I want to be a New York Times bestseller? Um,
Right.
sure, you could be a New York Times bestseller, but what are you willing to sacrifice to do it? Kind of thing, and that's time and or money essentially, and also gathering as much support as you can. My coworker said that Sanderson spends 10 hours a day writing. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Who has 10 hours a day to write? Well, a full-time professional author is the answer to that.
Well, right.
I write for maybe an hour or two after work and I am exhausted. I mean, even on days that I don't work, writing is exhausting. And it takes that kind of time and planning and coordination. But if you got the time, effort, ambition, uh, and even funds to do it, by all means, go for it.
Right. Yeah, see, and I don't even know if I could sit down for 2 hours and write. I really don't. Uh, my writing's quick. Like I half hour maybe, and I'm like, okay, I'm good.
And I was surprised too because that collection of shorts is like was the most in demand for the books I've written. I thought maybe something more coherent, like the first book is kind of a classic tale in the way it's written, 10 pages a chapter, 10 chapters or something like that. It's a
Right.
short, it's a novella, it's a short book, but it's a complete story written in the classical style. And I thought that would be the one that people would most identify with, but it turns out this poetry mishmash flash fiction collection is the one that's taken off. People are like, "Oh, this is different and alternative and new." I'm like, "Oh, okay." you know, I didn't think people read poetry anymore. I thought that was an 1800s thing, But
Right.
but apparently, no, poetry is still a thing. It's still out there, and there are even poetry communities that are dedicated to just writing and reading poetry online, whether on published or just blogs. So I think the demand is there. It's just how do you get to the people who want to read it, or how do you get people interested in reading what you have to say? Is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And I think realistically, so if you're looking back before, probably before social media, or even at the very beginning of it, your first book probably would have been what people went for. Now that people want more bite-sized things, more stuff that's quick that they can access fast, and maybe read those couple passages or stories and then be able to put it down. I think is probably more towards what people are looking for now
Yeah,
rather than a big long story,
yeah.
which. is unfortunate because some of the big long stories are fantastic. But
Yeah, and it's interesting that that is the case, and I think you hit the nail right on the head on that one because we have a TikTok world and Instagram, Facebook kind of thing where people are rolling through authors or presenters or hosts and so forth, basically trying to see what's out there, what kind of diverse um, stories and what kind of diverse videos can I watch that are fun and interesting, and then and move on to the next. So
right,
and you find that especially with the younger generation. And to be honest, I would be right there with them. And I kind of still am that way today. I kind of bounce around from book to book. I'm reading 3 books a little at a time for each. So
wow,
I can't even nail down to one book anymore. I'm just kind of all over the place. So you can't
so
really. That's kind of human nature how it is, especially when you're younger. You're out there searching and trying different things. But on the other hand, I'll say this: my fifth book here is twice as long as anything previous I've written, and I mentioned that to my wife, and she goes, "Good. Nobody likes to read a short book." And I was like, "What?" But she is a very deep reader, and there's a huge community for that too. I mean, Lord of the
oh
Rings,
yeah,
uh, Harry Potter. Everybody wants to see the series is out there, Sherlock Holmes, and they want to get involved with the character and know all the nitty gritty details. So for her and a lot of readers out there, they want a 1,200 page book. I don't know if
right,
I don't think I'll ever be a 1,200 page book author per se. I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to make any promises, but I don't.
right,
Even as a writer, my attention span is that long because if I'm getting bored writing it, then surely whoever's reading it is going to get bored too.
right. What's your fifth book centered around?
This one is called uh, Profession. I'm sorry, let me go back to that. Fifth book is called Definitive Nobody, Derek Barley.
Okay,
And the premise for this one is it's a somebody who considers himself a nobody. I'm just your average guy. I'm not important. It doesn't matter. And nobody cares about me. It's pretty obvious. And I'm just going to roll through my life and do my thing, and everything should be fine, right? Well, he kind of goes full tilt nobody. So opportunities that only happen to nobody happen to him.
okay,
He finds himself abducted by aliens and being a test pilot and getting kidnapped and that kind of thing. It's a comedy. It's funny. And I was telling somebody about the story. They're like, "Oh, that sounds pretty dark." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. It's funny. Trust me, it's funny."
I
Because
don't I don't see how even getting abducted by aliens could be dark, but I mean, teach their own.
yeah. But yeah, anything that happens to nobody is fair game for him, more or less. So there's this culmination of him becoming somebody or realizing that he's somebody throughout the course here. And not all of it is weird and fantastic. He's got a pet rabbit. He's got an everyday job. Um, he took care of his parents. Like his father left him when he was a boy, and his mother died when he was in his early 20s, kind of thing, from
Yeah.
a disease. So there's a lot of drama in it as well to pull it down to earth. Nothing is outer space fantastically funny, but there's a lot of humor involved, a lot of tongue in cheek and relatability to kind of living the life that people don't really recognize.
So it's funny, and I don't want to like offend you by using this analogy or anything like that. So please don't take that. But it very much reminds me of the Lego movie.
Okay,
If you've seen it, because obviously he's the normal guy, right? Work, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden he's thrust into this world where he's got to save everything. Kind of a similar vein, I guess, if you're thinking about it. Um, just your average Joe that all of a sudden is like, oh wait, maybe I'm not just average Joe.
right. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a very common theme. Is a lot of superhero starters are that way. You have
Yeah,
average
that's
Joe,
fair.
and they become a superhero. But in this case, he doesn't become a superhero necessarily. He is who he is, and
Right.
he works his way out of it just by being himself. So,
Yeah.
and
That's why I said similar vein, not exactly, but
sure, yeah, yeah. And I think it's a familiar premise that we can all identify with, and we have our hopes and dreams, and some of this stuff starts to come true for him, just not at the time and place that he expects it. So, and
so
not not in the way he
Okay.
expects it either.
Right. So out of curiosity, as an author, um, do you ever get consumed with like world building for your novels?
Yes, and that's a no, that's a
Uh,
great question.
Good. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
There's and just like there's so many directions to go with that question because and that's why it's such a fantastic question. And it was kind of the premise of a psycho author because this guy becomes kind of obsessed with this. Like the more he learns about writing and publishing and getting it done, and the more resistance that he encounters, the more he wants it to happen.
Right.
So, as there is the drive of this is going to fail, this is going to fail, he's pushing back as hard as he can. So when I was winging these out there, I was like, let's just see what happens. I was kind of nonchalant about it, and I had really low expectations. And when I saw it posted on Amazon, I got super excited. I was like, I don't even care what happens at this point. I'm just happy it's on Amazon. So, yeah. Who's your publisher? Amazon. Haha.
Right.
So
Yep.
subtext there. Don't publish anybody as long as it's not a threatening or you know a terrible book, more or less.
Right.
So as long as there's some level of quality or it's not threatening, then they'll let you publish through them. But yeah, it does, and you get into this uh, ambition of how far can I take this thing and how far can it go. And Psycho Author, I wanted it to be short, and it was short. It's novella length because again, it was kind of a trial, and I wanted it to be fast moving. But
Right.
on the current one here with Derek Barley, because of the open concept of being a nobody and what happens to a nobody and how does he get out of it or how does he get through it, that the possibilities are endless. I mean, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to get in the scope creep here. This book is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and
Right.
it's going to be too difficult for anybody to follow, even me. So
Yeah.
rein this in, and I had a list of things that I definitely wanted to include and a list of some things that I want to include, and then I would go through and just cross things out saying, you know what, this book's getting too big, we need to trim this thing down. So I want to narrow it down, keep it focused, keep it smaller. And there's people who do want a big book, but maybe a sequel would probably be the right answer for it, or a prequel.
Yeah.
I had some requests for X Captain Rourke's Adventure. um, the the first comment I got was from my wife when I published it, and she read it. She goes, "Okay, is that it?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, where's the rest of it?" I was like, "That's it." She goes, "No, no." She goes, "Well, there's so many things here that you could explain. You can go into much greater detail here. There can be a before, there can be an after kind of thing." And I got the same feedback from my daughter too. She goes, "I want to know more about this Captain Ruick." So I saw what she did. I knew who she was and what happened, but I don't know what's going on inside her brain. What is she thinking and how did she get to where she is? So I kind of been rolling around the idea of a prequel, which has been getting some support, where Captain Ruick is born a little girl, grows up, and then receives her commission from the crown to go and hunt pirates. So that
Okay.
I have that on reserve as book whatever my 5, 6 book 7 maybe.
Okay. Somewhere. Somewhere.
Because the ideas keep rolling and you gotta hit the brakes on it. Um, Before that first published book, I'm gonna double back if I could and say that I
Yeah.
had a couple failed books. I had 3 or 4 that I had to stop writing, like that comic, when I was a kid. And there were different reasons why. Like my current book, I had actually started before in my teens, but I had to stop it because it started getting too dark.
Okay.
It started involving war and him going to war and resolving the conflict within himself about being a pacifist, yet also fighting for what's right. And I didn't like the way that that was going. I was like, this is supposed to be a comedy, and now it's turning dark. And so I put the book
Gotcha.
away, and it sat on a shelf for 20 years or something. And then I'm picking it up, going, you know what? All I have to do is take out the dark parts. Red line, red line. Let's make
Right.
it funny again. So that one was a reinvention of an old book. And even one of them that I wrote in a comic style called, and this one's going to be book 6, hopefully, called Spy Life Rear View Mirror. And the reason why the title is what it is there's a lot of spy books out there, and it's really kind of hard to discern, what the style is. But I wanted something funny. I liked watching Get Smart and some Naked Gun and some parody of James Bond and all that.
Right.
I wanted something funny, but not slapsticky vaudeville type humor. I wanted something that was more literary witticism than necessarily the slapstick stuff or the quick jokes. I also like Groucho Marx a lot, so I like his
Nice.
one-liner witty stuff. But there might be some of that style humor in there, but definitely something more tongue-in-cheek and weird situation type things. So, Spy Life Rearview Mirror is basically about a super spy, or at least a guy who kind of feels that he is kind of a macho man. I can do this. I can take on the world kind of thing. And to
Right.
be fair, in order to get into that occupation, you need that. So, if you're ever thinking of becoming a spy, if you check out the CIA website, they have a very stringent requirement on who they're going to take as far as your physical and mental abilities, your self confidence, and all of that. You have to be the total package, both socially, physically, even emotionally, to be able to handle that kind of work. So the people who make it into that occupation are a rare breed, and
Right.
it's like let's have some fun with that and make these guys a little goofy, crazy too. Give them a touch of funny humor to go along with it, and put them in some weird situations that spies wouldn't expect themselves to be in, and have them work it out. So hopefully that'll be book 6. But I'm kind of speaking ahead here, assuming that tomorrow comes and I'm still writing. So that's the plan.
Yeah, you got to look ahead, so it's okay. I mean, I'm sure you got, you know, 8, 9, 10 somewhere rattling around up there as well. So,
It would be nice. I mean, there's concepts, but you kind of
right,
have to ask yourself a question: is it interesting, and is it original? And I don't really see my first book as a oh my gosh, never written a pirate book before. Well, of course
right,
there's pirate books out there. It's not a very popular genre right now. It was kind of more popular in the 50s, I'd say, than even right now. But I wanted to bring new things to it. What are the elements that are new? And a female captain was one of them, because there were actually female pirates. So, like Mary Read was a female pirate. Bonnie, I can't remember. I'm sorry, but yeah, there were
right,
there
you're
were
fine.
some female pirates of the age, but they were very very rare, just because of the difficulty in the work, and of course the surroundings of that occupation at the time.
Right,
Um, so that was kind of the new spin on it, and I also wanted a plot twist as well. The book starts off her recalling a mutiny, and her lesson learned from that mutiny. Okay, I'm never going to put myself in that situation again, kind of thing.
right,
A very solid job of ensuring a mutiny never happens again. And part of that comes from a lot of positive morale with the crew and getting cohesiveness together. And it actually ends up coming up again later. That's a demon that didn't go away. It came back later, and she has to face it again. But it's not her own crew. It was an ex mutineer that she meets up with. So it's like, I mean, can this memory go away? Nope, here it is, and here they are in person. Now you've got to deal with it again. So
right.
that's kind of true for all of our lives. Is we can't necessarily bury our past. We kind of have to come face to face with it and resolve it.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, what I guess if you had the time, if you had the unlimited resources or whatever, what book, what type of book would you want to write that you haven't?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, because the plans are out there for what's currently in queue. I kind of laid out, okay,
Right,
what's going to happen first and why. If I had unlimited time and resources and effort, Uh, it would probably be an epic or epic series, because of my admiration for it. I do like Lord of the Rings, and I got to say though, I like The Hobbit better. I'm sorry,
okay,
that's gonna make some people very. That's gonna make people angry. What do you mean you like The Hobbit? It was just kind of a goofy one-off. I was like, yeah, but it was punchy and it was interesting and it laid the foundation and all this other stuff. Uh, Lord of the Rings, the second book, to Two Towers, there was so much war and stuff going on all at once that was super exciting. I mean, you could tell that Tolkien had all this mapped out very precisely.
right,
To get that kind of mapping and interaction going, and as you said, world building to where there is a whole world. would be fantastic. I think that would be cool. But I think the measure of focus and dedication needed for that is more than I have available right now, just because I'm working full time, and then to have
Right.
to keep track of all that. And I had heard that as well, that a lot of these epic fantasy writers have lore masters. They have either a reader or somebody on their staff who knows all of their lore so that they don't accidentally bring back a dead character.
Oh.
Like that.
Oh.
They have other people, kind of check them and make sure that they don't do that. They don't violate their own rules of the lore. If a magic has a certain system, that they don't violate their own rules, that kind of thing. So
Right.
he kind of need a lot of support for that. I think it would be cool to have a world. Maybe if X Captain Rook's Adventure becomes a series, if there's interest in it. I mean, if people want it, then sure, I'll write it. I don't mind. If you like it, then I'll continue. But I don't think I would go back to that otherwise. I'm not going to say I'm going to create a series, and if nobody likes it, who cares? Because
Right.
that one, now I've got nobody's attention at that point. I don't even have my own, so there's not the motivation there. But making these shorter books, novellas, or even now currently in novel for Definitive Nobody, Derek Barley, I would probably want to keep shuffling and trying different things before I, do one gigantic world and build things up that way.
I gotcha. No, that makes sense. See, I recently I was like, oh, I got, my brain went just. I get an idea and it just like spirals out of control every
Mm.
time I have something. Like it never fails. So I'm like, oh, let's make this world, and we'll have these different societies, and they're going to be named this, and I'm going to name, and I had like 4 pages like of not even story of just characters and places and world, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this.
And that's fine. They call those authors pantsers. They don't have anything in mind when they start writing. They just start writing, and where it goes, it goes. And there is a great number of authors who are perfectly successful doing that. And there's a great number of readers who love that kind of thing. They like not
Yeah,
knowing. They don't want to see a elaborate, drawn out plot where they have to connect the dots and things like that. They just want to have fun and read. So, that is one writing style. There's also a writing style where they call them architects, where they sit down, they plan everything before they begin their first word. They've got an outline form, and here's how the plot's going to go, and then this and that,
right,
all the pins on the board kind of thing, and here's how I'm going to connect the dots. So those architects actually have a harder time starting, but once they do, they've got everything laid out, and they can hit full throttle that way. I'm a bit 50-50. I have an idea.
okay,
I've got an outline, and I've heard Stephen King does very similar. I found this out later, that he has notes, random notes and an outline of key points that he wants to hit, key characters and what they do and what they're like, and then he forms it all together in a story. And I think I'm more akin to that, where there's certain things I want to hit, but usually when I first start writing, I don't know how it's going to end.
right.
And then maybe like a third of the way or halfway through, I'm like, oh, there's the ending. And I write the ending, and I'm like, oh, now I got to connect the two. So we've got that stuff in between. How do I get from point A to point B? I know they exist, but how do I fill this in and make everything connect? So
Right,
for me, I call it the hybrid model. There's some starting off, off the seat of your pants, and then there's some outlines and notes that develop along the way. And then in this current one, I'm trying to trim things back to keep things moving and cohesive to get to that ending. So I'm hoping in the next 5 or 6 months I can have this book done.
nice. So, real quick, just to add kind of a personal touch to this, when you're writing these stories, aside from your kind of journaling one, your other ones, have you noticed that you're putting maybe some of yourself or the situations that you're dealing with into the stories at that time?
Yes, I love it that you ask all yes questions. It's fantastic. And then from your question, you can go any direction that you want. So this is awesome. So is there yourself in these stories? And I have found out, I discovered this. I did not know that this was true for everybody. But most people, as I understand it, when they play an online game, for example, I'm a big online gamer,
Yeah.
a lot of MMORPGs, especially in that world or that realm, and you're playing like a first person character and you create the character, most people will put themselves into that character,
Yep.
and they will flood the character with themselves to either the person being an identical match except for the superpowers and magic, you know.
Right. Right.
And that's more typical than the opposite, which is somebody who creates somebody who's so completely off the wall and different and not like them and then go ahead and play them. That's kind of the weird role of it. But I tend to go that direction. I like creating somebody who's completely different and not like me at all. Um, and I've made people mad that way. So my friends and what have you. So I've made a character that was a dark elf rogue type character, and
Right.
he was a jerk. You know, he was everybody hated, and they didn't want to be around him. They hated him. You know, and he was like he was stealing stuff. You know, like literally stealing stuff off of their kills and kill stealing, what have you. And we're like,
Right.
dude, will you cut it out? I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just playing a character. So for me, there was a wall of separation. And I think that also helps when I was in high school and college. I did acting in high school and an improv
Nice.
in college. And in improv, you can be whoever you want, which is fantastic as well. But you play these characters and you have no connection with them at all. You're just kind of playing the character. You're just having fun with who they would be. So I tend to favor that more than putting in myself. However, comma,
Yeah.
when it came to that fourth book, Specks of Shadows, Flecks of Light, there's so much me in it. It's absurd. There are my emotions, there are my feelings, my soul, my gut, my fears, and my passions, and but they're expressed in kind of a weird way because it mixes fantasy and reality. So there aren't orcs in real life, but there are orcs in this story. So
Right.
and that's kind of where the I think that's where Lord of the Rings got the connection with the audience is yeah, there's no elves running around, but you know people who are like this kind of thing. So yeah, there's a ton of injection of me and Specks of Shadows and Flecks of Light, which is why it's my fourth book and not my first book
Right.
because nobody wants to be rejected. Nobody wants to say this is stupid or this guy's an idiot, you know, this kind of thing. So there's a
Uh,
massive fear of rejection that holds back anybody from publishing anything. So that's why I was like, let me do a story first, and then I'll do this nonfiction thing, and then the third one, psycho author. Again, that's a character that I am not. So I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm not a chain smoker.
right.
I haven't committed any crimes, but you know, I could quote play this character who does in the book, and this is what happens to him, and this is the mess that he gets into. But his struggles with trying to publish a book or having problems, you know, that's a very real thing, you know,
Right.
or you
Right.
have to self censor when you're writing, or you have to resolve, you know, problems with angry customer, or try to get through the computer system when it says your book is like my first book went on what was it? It was disapproved. I don't want to say it was banned. It was disapproved. Or, oh, it was blocked. Amazon had blocked it.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was like, what happened? I had a book for 3 weeks and now it's blocked.
Right.
Well, specifically, and it took me a week and a half to get it unlocked. So for a week and a half, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if somebody tries to get this book? I've been telling everybody about it and they can't get it and it's not there, it's gone. So I'm freaking out. And this is all nightmare fuel for Psycho Author. That book, that I'm feeding into that book all at the same time. But it turned out what happened was I updated a file with some typos, but
Oh.
the file name had the same title. So when Amazon got it, they said he's trying to publish this twice, and we're not going to allow that. Block the book.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, I got it now. Don't upload a file with the same file name, even though
Right.
some of the content is different. So I renamed the file name, and they were like, yeah, well, no problem, we fixed it. You're good. Don't worry about it. So, but that was scary for me to have one book and then have it blocked after a couple
Right.
weeks.
I can
Uh,
imagine.
so yeah, it depends on the book. My nonfiction book, of course, is all that's all the experiences that I've had. It's
Yeah.
not a lot about my emotions, feelings, and things like that. But in giving the advice, it's all based on my experiences. And then I guess book four is more of the soul of the author, I would say, in
Yeah.
the poetry, flash fiction, and short stories there. So in this fifth book here, Definitive Nobody, Derek Barley. I don't know if you've ever heard of the old comic called Timid Soul, or the concept.
Mm, no.
Timid Soul, there's a main character named Casper Milktoast, and he is the most he's timid guy. He's socially awkward. He's kind of timid, and there's a lot of that in Derek Barley's personality. And it's not that he's necessarily timid. He's just ultra polite and concerned with other people's feelings all of the time. He's like constantly apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, so sorry, so sorry. And it's not even his fault, and he's apologizing. It's just
Yeah.
this guy's nature. And there's a part of that in me too. And even
Have you been talking to my wife?
yeah, I think a lot of the people can relate. And we'll do that. We'll do that whole Canadian standoff. My wife and I even will. You ever heard of
Right.
Canadian standoff where you
It,
open the door for each other? After you, no, after you, after you.
yep.
So you
Yep.
get so polite that nobody can make any progress.
Right.
So, and that's part of the humor of that book too. And there's some soul injection of that, and even people I know, but there are aspects of the personality. I don't take any real life person and put them completely into a fiction work. I think that's kind of cheating, and I think it's kind
Right.
of wrong. And it's kind of wrong unless you get their permission to do that. So that's
No,
just
for sure.
my take on it.
So since we're hitting close to an hour, we'll wrap up here soon. But so, have you ever thought of taking your first book X and doing? So I know you talked about a prequel and a sequel. Have you talked about taking it a different direction? And what I mean by that is, and I bring this up because you just mentioned you like playing like the online like Warcraft type games. Um, what if you created maybe not an online game, but like a game similar to like you say Dungeons and Dragons or even some of the card based games they have out, stuff like that, and expanding that world of X into something like that.
That's again, you got the best questions in the world, and I need to learn your interviewing skills to be honest, because
I don't have any.
if I can get somebody to say yes as often as you got me to say yes, then I'd be good to go. So, answer to that question is heck yeah. I mean, I would love to see this as a game, and it kind of was a game. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pirates of the Burning Sea.
No, not offhand.
It was
I
a
might have seen it.
it was a Sony creation. I think it was around 2007, 2008, and I had written this book prior to, like a few years prior to. And, I think Pirates of the Caribbean, I can't even remember if that came first or if my book came first or what. But I really liked the very first Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp in there. And there
Yeah.
is also Cutthroat Island is a pirate genre thing. Um, and there was also a comic book called El Cazador, which was based off of uh, a Spaniard girl who actually took over a pirate ship and got revenge on the people who killed her father, kind of thing. So
Okay.
the influences were certainly there. There was something called the Seventh Sea card game and a role playing game, and I played a bit of that too. So there is different media out there. I did manage to snag a fantastic narrator for an audiobook version of it. His name is
Okay.
Callum Hale, Callum, and his last name is Hale. And I dig his voice. And I said, well, let me try this audiobook thing for fun to see how it would go. And
Right.
when he picked up the audition, he read that script. I was like, oh my gosh, he's not a narrator, he's a voice actor. Holy smokes! Every quote that he read from different characters was like a different person. I'm like, it blew my mind. I was like, I had no idea an audiobook could sound that good. And I said, okay, how do I get you to be my narrator?
Right.
And he was super nice. He goes, you just ask and I will do it. I'm like, okay, great. So I was very, very happy that he came out with that audiobook version, now on Audible, for X Captain
Nice.
Adventure. And it's my favorite version. I like that better than the written version. I was like, I'll listen to this. And it's like an hour, I think an hour and some listen, hour and 20 minutes or so.
Oh,
And
nice.
what he puts into that is so much emotion and drama. And he had characters in there that I didn't even know had that much expression and feeling with them. But he kind of read between the lines and knew these characters. And he asked me for my notes on it too. And I overloaded them. I was like, oh, here's all my notes. And he goes, okay, slow down, hold up, hold up. He says, keep in mind, this is just a voice recording. It's not a
Right.
movie script. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I got you. It's not a movie script. And somebody says, can you turn it into a movie? I was like, probably. And the reason why, oh yeah, they said, how about a play? I was like, sure. And I think the reason why it would translate okay as a play is because it's character based. And I like books that are about characters. And it started out being a book about events, like, oh, this happened and then this happened, and all the sequence of exciting things that happened. But it turned
Right.
into a character book. And I think that's why it would translate really well into a film or a stage performance. A game, heck yeah. I mean, as long as the gameplay is good enough, because the focus has to change a little bit. Yeah, you can have a great story, but if the gameplay is terrible, nobody's going to want to play it. So,
So so yes, but with the game, you have the essential part which you just said because your book is very character based.
Mhm.
So if you look at even any game, online game or solo, it doesn't matter. The story can be anything, right? But if you don't have that solid character you can get behind, it doesn't really matter how good the story is. It doesn't
sure.
matter how good the events are. So you have the base already because you could write a story for a game. That's not a problem. Hey, you know, I mean, who you're trying to find a killer in 6 rooms. I mean,
Yeah,
it's there, but they don't remember the rooms, right? They remember the characters. You remember Colonel Mustard, you know, you remember Miss Peacock. You remember all these, and not the rooms.
sure.
But so you have the base there for it if it's character driven.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because one of the short stories in Specks of Shadows, Flecks of Light, I spun off into a short story that you can buy separately for 99 cents on
Oh,
Amazon
nice.
called and the short story is called Steps of Eternity, a gaming sci-fi short story. And
Okay.
it's a short story about a kid who gets so wrapped up in VR, virtual reality, that like his life just kind of flies by. You know, his thing is to game and getting involved so much into that game that real life is kind of like a, oh, I have to log out and use the bathroom kind of thing, but it has no interest or joy in compared to the game. So
Right.
there's a surprise twist on that one. Maybe a little Twilight Zone in the way it's it's.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, he kind of invests all of his time and energy into the game because he loves it so much, and he's involved in decades. And that kind of parallels my life too, because I've been playing EverQuest off and on since 1999. So
Okay.
World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek Online, all those games. So I've at least invested months, if not years, into these games. Um, and yeah, I mean, if the story can be turned into a game, I think that would be fantastic.
Well,
Live,
who knows?
live the,
Who knows might listen and be like, "Hey, all right, let's do
sure.
this." So what advice do you have for anybody since we've talked publishing and writing? What advice would you have for anyone that's maybe even starting out, just starting maybe their writing journey in general?
That's a good question because everybody has kind of a different start and a different path. And I know that's cliche. Everybody's like, "Oh, you got to follow your own way," and Mikey, just do it. And yeah, there's some truth to that. There is, but I think what you really have to diagnose for yourself is what is your goal? What is it that you want to accomplish? And is this going to get me there? And I think a lot of people get enchanted by the idea of being a New York Times bestseller author. And they're like, okay, gonna write a book, gonna sell it to millions of people, gonna quit my job. And, and sometimes they do that in the wrong order. Sometimes they quit their job and now I'm gonna
Yep.
write my book. And I'm like, oh, no. So
Yep.
that's not really the way to go about that. So,
Nope.
as with any hobby, you don't say I'm going to become a fisherman and then go out on a boat and say I'm just going to catch fish and sell it. You kind of have to have the idea of how is this going to work on a practical basis. So, I mean, you're going to need a boat, you're going to need rods, you're going to need fuel, you're going to need somebody who wants to buy your fish and all this. So these are considerations. If all you want to do is publish a book for you to have, then there's no reason you shouldn't do it. You should do it right now. So
Yep.
if your goal is my goal is to have a book in my hands and that was for me too was I want something that's hardcover and it has to be in black and white print in my hands. So it was exciting to have an ebook that I could access through my phone or through my Kindle. And I'm like, oh, cool. It's actually out there. It's on the internet. But it's also, as with everything on the internet, it kind of temporary. So I
Right.
wanted something physical and in my hands. So when that book arrived in the mail and I opened it up and the cover looks exactly like it did online. And and I could put my hands on it. And I was like, wow, this is an actual book. It's physical.
Yep.
You would go to the library and something you would pull off a shelf. There's no description for that. I can't put that into words. When you have your own ISBN on the back, just like Edgar Allan Poe's complete poems,
Yep.
and Dickinson and all those people, you have one thing in common with them, and that is that you are in print. If
Yep.
that if that's your goal, that's free. Do it now.
Right.
That's
Right.
if your goal is, again, I kind of went to two extremes there, because there are some people who kind of like I was, I'll wing it out there and I'll see where it goes, and there's nothing wrong with that either. You can kind of poke around and see what happens with it. If this is something you want to share with your friends and family, do it now. So because
Right.
you'll be surprised at people who will support you. You may be surprised at the people who won't support you, but that
Yep.
really isn't your focus and goal, because remember, reading's a very personal thing. There's people who aren't going to like what you create because it's just not their taste. It's not what they're into. So if everybody was into heavy metal, there wouldn't be all these different genres out there.
Right. Right.
You're not going to take somebody who listens to rap, sit them down, and say, you're going to listen to metal whether you like it or not. They're going to be like, no.
Yeah, and expect them to love it. Yeah.
So, you got to be respectful of people's choices, what they like and what they enjoy. And some friends and family may buy it just to support you, and some may actually, be fully into it and enjoy it and support you on it.
Yep.
So there is that mix. If you want to write it for that audience, for friends and family, or even to discover who supports you on it, then by all means do that.
Yeah.
But I think if your goal is to get rich quick, you better try something else. I don't think this is a get rich business, so to speak, for writing books. If you are retired and you've got a lot of money and you're like, you know what, this money is not going anywhere, I'm tired of vacations, I'd rather put it into advertising and be well known, then you can do that. You'll spend more money than you make, especially at first, trying to get well known and try to get in front of people's eyes. But it will probably happen. You'll probably sell books. Amazon's got great marketing. Google's everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and everybody's like, well, let me take advantage of free marketing like Facebook. Well, guess what?
Yeah, it's not free.
You well, you and everybody else. If you're not going to pay
Right.
for it, then you're going to become part of the spam that's everybody else saying, read and watch, take a look at my book. And
Yep.
there's now zones where they're like, oh, you have to join this book if you want, or you got to join this group in order to promote your book, because we don't allow spam here, kind of thing. So
Yep.
there's little cubby holes you have to go into and start barking your book, and hopefully somebody's interested. I hadn't had any luck with free marketing, to be honest. I hadn't, had anybody I didn't know hear me pitch a book and say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to buy that," and actually do it.
Well,
if
we'll see. I'm not going to charge you, but we'll put it out there. Actually, go tell everybody where they can find everything. Put out all your stuff for me.
Sure, yeah, it's if you go online to Google and you type in Aegelis, my name, Aegelis, or as you said, you've got some links here. I have also a Facebook page with a group. I've got I'm on Goodreads, so I got a small group of friends and family and some other people I've met online as well. If you want to go to Goodreads, which is also owned by Amazon, and they have a great way of reviewing books and leaving ratings, then it's also with the name. You could also use the book names if there's a particular book that you're interested in. Amazon.com, of course. I do have a YouTube channel as well. So if you want to see the goofy videos that I post, then you're welcome to. My videos are based not so much on writing. I have a couple that are about writing, but most of it is like obscure music that you can't find online anywhere else. So I'll
Nice.
I'll upload that. They're like I had this CD of Doctor Who variations on a theme,
Okay.
and apparently that's really popular. So I just uploaded it because the disc was looking old and I didn't know if it was going to stop working one day. So I
Right.
uploaded it to YouTube, and all of a sudden, years later, I got like thousands of hits on it. I'm like, what the heck? It took years, but people are starting to discover the thing. And then also Speed Racer, there was a mix by Alpha Team called the Club Mix, which is a clean version. It's a family version
Right.
of that. And people were like, I've been looking for this for years. Where did you find it? I literally found it in a thrift store. And I was
Oh,
like,
that's funny.
I'm going to upload this to YouTube, and boom, it's there. So you can go on YouTube, type in Aegelis, and look at all the videos there. I got some author interviews there, some writing tips, just weird random stuff, which is what I think YouTube is good for.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely have all the links posted. It'll be on our website as well. So people will be able to find it, no problem. And we'll uh we'll hopefully get you some more books sold and stuff because
Excellent. I honestly, what I really like most of all is people saying, "I really like your book," and if you truly enjoy it, I think it's up to us as an audience, as fans, to reach out to, even in a review or in a email or something, to say, "Hey, I really enjoyed your book." I'm a fan of a lot of authors, and I'm getting to meet a lot of authors now that I have a book written.
right.
I become fan of other authors as well, and I try to read their stuff and talk with them about their books too. So yeah, even just saying I like your book, that makes a person's day, week, or even year more
Oh
so
yeah.
than anything else. So
Yep, 100%. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you're always welcome back. So
great.
when your next book comes out, we'll definitely get you back and be like, all right, here's the next one.
Thank you, Neil. And I would like to do the reverse at some point. If you'd like to talk about your book, I would certainly enjoy interviewing you either through like a podcast like this or YouTube or however you'd want, because I'm interested in learning more about your book. I put it on my Amazon list, so I have it in my
Okay,
book, and I'd like to check that out.
perfect. Well, I'll make sure you get like a copy somehow. So,
Great.
um, cool. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Neil. Have a great
Of
day.
course. All right, and that will wrap up that episode. So thanks again, everyone who listened. Thanks, Aegelis, for sharing with us. Definitely a ton of good insight from that episode. Remember, you can find me on the socials, Sticko Podcast. You can check out the website, stickopodcast.com, or you can shoot me an email, stickopodcast@gmail.com. We're wrapping out the year, wrapping up the season, so until next time, be safe. Don't be a stranger.